Here in the United States, we also give a tax exemption to religious institutions. The neighborhood church, or synagogue, or nowadays, we have to be general, the mosque too. They are exempt. They don't have to pay taxes. What an interesting idea. That allows those of us who don't find these particular ideas persuasive the wonderful opportunity that we have to pay, of course, more taxes to cover the delivery of public services to them. If a church calls for the police to come, they come. If the church has a fire, the fire department, somebody has to pay that cop and that fire. I do, you do. We all get to pay, whether we agree with them or not, to in a country that prides itself on saying, everybody should be required to pay their own way, we create an exemption for churches. They don't. And guess what? Suppose we made the churches pay for the public services they get, no more or less than anybody else. Well, they'd have to go to their parishioners and get the money to do that. And then we would have an interesting test about whether Americans are all that religious when they would actually have to pay for it.
Now, I know that you're not saying that all we need is higher taxes, because you're really putting the cart before the horse, because unless you have a fundamental change in the balance of class forces, this social compact falls apart the minute you get pressure on profits, as you had in 1970. So, I just want you to sort of clarify that, because you get a change in class power, and then, you start a move towards basic redistribution, or am I reading you incorrectly?
No, I'm not so, I agree with you that all of what we're discussing here is interesting and fun, and I try to build some humor into it, as you can see, and all the rest. But unless there's a change, as you put it, in class forces, then all of this is just so much clever talk, and it's not going to make a concrete difference. I admit to something. It's a device that speakers and teachers, which I've been all my life, always use. I am trying to provoke you, right? I am clearly trying to make this situation as starkly absurd and unjust as I possibly can, in the hope that the sheer horror of it activates you, motivates you, makes you realize, my God, to accept this and quietly go back to watching television is to be a real mouse instead of a human being. And my assumption is most of you do not wish to think of yourself as mice, and would rather think of yourselves as upstanding, self-reliant, Thoreauian, Walden Pond type of individuals who are not going to let anything happen. And if you're outraged, well, hopefully you won't go into the woods and deal with nature, but we don't have those anymore anyway, so it's not a real problem. But that you'll be motivated. But that's obviously not enough. And I do believe that an organization of class-based politics is the sine qua non. Without that, the rest of this is not going to happen. I would disagree. I'm not interested in redistribution. This is not, that is a politics I do not agree with. You're not going to solve the problem of this society by taking the money from those who have it and giving it to those who don't. However nice that is as a short, that doesn't change anything. And as long as the people who are in a position to control the production apparatus remain in that position, then even if you can temporarily take a portion of it away, they retain the positions in the society to make that a very temporary event. That's why the portion, but the top 10% went up, it went down, right? And during this period, people thought America had become a more equal society. But if you don't change the basic structure of production, it becomes temporary. That's why I stress in everything I do a change at the base of society, in the organization of every enterprise. No more organizing enterprises so that the majority of people come 9 to 5, 5 days a week, do their job, and go home. Whereas a tiny group of people, a board of directors, 15 to 20 people, selected by the major shareholders of the company, another group typically of 15 to 20 people, make the decisions what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits. You've created in the middle of the production apparatus a conflict of interest between those at the top who make the decisions and get the profits, and those at the bottom, the vast majority, who do all the work. This is a disaster waiting to happen. They don't agree. They don't see the world the same way. They clash at least as often as they can cooperate. And their interests are not the same. That has to go. Again, remember what I told you. If the workers ran the enterprises, they would not have stopped raising their wages. There would have been no need to, and they wouldn't have done it. Because they have a different way of thinking about themselves. They have different interests. It made sense for the employer to do that. That's why they did. I'm not angry at them. That's what employers are there to do. They did what the system makes them do. If you don't want them to behave the same way, you got to change the system. You cannot appeal to their morality if their morality will make them do something that the system will throw them out of their job for doing. You ask a businessman to be a very noble spirit, you know, that's fine. On Sunday in the church, we all be of noble spirit, but we all know it's over in an hour. Then we go home, we have lunch, and the spirit waits till next Sunday, when we repeat this experience precisely to make us feel better about what we're doing in the interval, which violates all these. We know that's what it's for. We know that. I hope you know that. So the thing is, you've got to change the system. And Americans have a peculiar reticence about what is this? Why would you believe, as an American, and I'm not just talking to you, but I'm talking to all the people you talk to. If you're an American, you're supposed to believe in democracy. Okay, well, what is this? You go to work, you cross the threshold into the store, or the factory, or the office where you work. What happens? Your interest in democracy disappears until 5 o'clock? Democracy is only what you do in the neighborhood where you live, but not in the job where you work. You spend much more time at your job than at anything else. If democracy meant anything to you, you demand it on the job. Democracy means all of us who work here participate in the decisions we have to live with. What to produce, how to produce, and all the rest. Why would Americans simply imagine that that's not relevant? Why would they accept this? And the idea it can't be done? Come on. It can't be done. You know, when democracy was proposed as an alternative to monarchy, the conservatives said, my God, if you don't have a king telling us what to do, everything will fall apart. There'll be no civilization. Somebody has to give the orders. Then we made an experiment. Remember the French Revolution? We separated the king from his head. And made it less possible for him to give orders. And did the society fall apart? Did civilization evaporate? No. Well, the other example I like, it used to be the norm that when you reach, 12, 15, 20 years of age, the time to go find a mate and make a family, that you would have to have a spouse. And the way it was organized would be that your parents would find a suitable partner for you. The idea that you would go out there and do that yourself was thought of as absurd. You're too young, you don't understand the way the world works, your hormones are out of control, you're a mess. To allow you to pick your own partner would be the end of civilization. Nowadays, most of you find this a quaint old idea. You insist on going out there and finding one on your own, a partner. Did the world fall apart? Did it? Come on. So here's a thought. Suppose enterprises didn't have a board of directors and a manager. Suppose people did it themselves in a collective way. What is this notion it can't be done? It can't work. What is this? Whence this kind of, I don't know how well it will work any better than you do, but to foreclose the situation strikes me as a bizarre inability to imagine other than the way we normally live. Should we have?
My question is, there's something really interesting happened this weekend when John Boehner, the House Minority Leader, seemed to reverse his position about, saying he'd settle for, keeping the tax cuts for the lower 95% of Americans. And, the Republican Party freaked out, and the talking heads on television freaked out, and basically are threatening Boehner's job now. And he's no idiot. I mean, he must smell this too. It must be the same thing that you're saying.
Well, I think the Republicans have a dilemma. Not just the Democrats have a dilemma. The Republicans want to be the party of the people who get this money. That's the smart thing. By the way, Democrats want that too, because this is where the money is. And if you run for office in the United States today, you need a lot of money. You have to be on television, you have to do all that stuff. That's very money intensive. So if you want to make it in politics, you better tap that money or you're not going to have much of a chance. Mr. Boner wants to do that. That money is concentrated in the people who don't want to start paying taxes if the tax cuts expire for the top income. They don't want that. So part of the Republican Party wants to keep these people happy, to keep that money flowing so they can defeat Obama and they can win. But the other part understand that what Obama is doing by focusing on this tax cut, letting it lapse, is trying to set up what the Republicans used to call class war. He wants to make it clear, I'm with the mass of people, you Republicans are just for the fat cats, the rich people. That's very dangerous for the Republicans because they are not just the party of the people with money, they're the party of the people who are freaked out by what's going on tonight, the Tea Party and the social conservatives and so forth. They don't want to lose them because if they lose them, they'll have a lot of money, but they'll lose the election.